Joan West, and this video is Beading Tools Demystified. While there may be thousands and thousands of different kinds and colors of beads out there, it doesn't take a lot of tools to do beading. But in this video, I'm going to tell you about the ones you really should have and the ones that are really helpful in addition to the necessity. There are 3 other videos in the series: Bead Types Demystified, Bead Finishes Demystified, and Jewelry Findings for Beaders Demystified. I hope you enjoy this video and thank you for watching. First off, let's look at some pliers. These are chain nose pliers. They're used a lot in jewelry making. They have a flat edge on the inside and taper to a pretty much point on the end. You'll use them for holding things, for opening jump rings, just all kinds of things. I actually have them in 2 sizes. This is a regular size and this is a little miniature one. These are great like for opening small jump rings and holding small ear wires. Very useful, I think, having 2 pairs. Next we have round nose pliers, and these really have one purpose, but it's pretty important. If you'll notice, the end of them is round. I don't know how well you can see that there. And it kind of gradually becomes larger towards the base, smaller towards the tip. And the purpose that they have is to make bead loops. You put the wire around it and make a loop out of it, but used quite commonly in beading. Here's another pair that isn't absolutely necessary, but I kind of like. They're bent nose pliers, and what I like about them is that they enable you to hold something off to the side. So if you're working and manipulating something, it can be really nice having the ability to kind of hold it off to the side rather than underneath. Another important tool are flush cutters. The pointy jaws of this cutter are flat on one side and V-shaped on the other. If I hold it up here, you can probably see that pretty well. When you cut wire with this tool, you'll end up with a wire piece that has a flat or flush cut, and another that is angled. Again, that gives you a real professional look. Flush cutters. Do not use these, however, with memory wire. Memory wire will put dents in them. Memory wire is very hard, and you need a special cutter for that. If you work with wire much, it's nice to have a pair of these. These are nylon jaw pliers, and their whole purpose is to straighten wire. You just put the wire in and then pull on it. The nylon protects the wire so that it doesn't get damaged. This is a nice tool if you're like me and not very good at making eye pins. This is a 1-step looper, and all you have to do is stick the wire in, poke it through like that, and then pull the handle. And voila, you have a complete eye pin with the ends cut off neatly. A really important tool is a pair of small sharp scissors such as these. You have to be able to get in and cut your thread cleanly. If you use something like Fireline, a braided thread, it's going to dull them quickly, but it's important to have a pair of these. Make sure they're sharp. A really handy tool is a thread burner. This is a thread sapper too. What this does is it has a filament on the end that is gets very hot, and it's, you notice, very tiny. You can get in and it cuts and burns away the thread. I find it a lot easier to use than trying to cut the thread. When you're trying to get in between beads, it can be really hard to get close. It just happens to be hard for me, and I find this an indispensable tool. You're going to want some good beading needles to bead. Beading needles are longer and thinner than regular needles. There are 3 sizes that are used mainly: 10s, 11s, and 12s. The smaller the number, the larger the needle. I'm not sure you can see the difference here, but this number 10 is thicker than this number 12. Number 12 is quite thin and easy to bend. What brand you use really depends on what you like. I happen to prefer tulip beading needles because they don't tend to get bent as much, bent out of shape as much as some other brands. It's not really a problem if they get bent. You know, if you watch many videos of beaders, you're going to see needles like this that have some curve to it. Just because you're putting the needle through the beads so many times and they're often at a curve, they're going to end up getting bent. But I like to keep mine as straight as possible, so I happen to like this kind. But any sort will do. It's just important that you are using beading needles. Beading thread is another thing that you're going to need for doing bead weaving or bead stitching. You're going to need specific beading thread. There are two basic kinds. These two are examples of nylon thread, and this is an example of braided beading thread. Let's look at the nylon thread first. They're cut in lots and lots of different colors. That's one of the advantages of it. There are a number of different brands. This one is Nymo. This one is KO. There's also Ceylon, 1G, a number of other kinds. They're good for general bead weaving and bead stitching. Not so good for anything involving crystals where you have sharp edges, because the nylon is easily cut by the sharp edges. It's a much softer product than the other I'm going to show you, but that's nylon. Some people love it. Just depends on what you like. This happens to be what I like. This is braided beading thread. This one is Fireline. There's also Wildfire and Power Pro. You notice there's a picture on the fish here, of a fish on the front here. That's because this was originally fishing line. It comes in different weights, and which is also different sizes. So you can see it referred to either by the weight. For instance, this is six pounds, which is a diameter of 0.008. There's also 4 pounds, which is 0.006, 8 pounds, which is 0.009. I even have a 20 pound, which is, I'm not sure I have the diameter of that here. This is for really large beads, 20 pound. But this is going to be a much more common size, 4 or 6 pounds, that you would use for small beads. So it just depends on what you like and what kind of beading you're going to do, but you're going to want some kind of good beading thread. If you're going to be stringing beads, you want some kind of a stringing wire. This is Beadalon. That's a common kind. It comes in different weights and different lengths, and it's stiffer than beading thread. You may also need, this is an actual artistic wire. This is an actual wire. This one is silver, and you can use it for making your own findings, such as ear wire. Something else that's really handy is some kind of a scoop for your beads. Beads are small, they go everywhere, and there are lots of kinds of scoops out there. There's some triangular ones I've seen that are quite popular. This one happens to be, I don't even remember where I got it. It's tweezers and then a scoop on the end. They're just for kind of a quick way to pick up all those beads, because it's otherwise can be pretty tedious trying to pick them all up by hand. So some kind of a scoop, some way to get your beads back into their container when they're done using. This is beading wax, and this is one just happens to be rather handy because you can pull the thread through these slots. Technically, especially for something like Fireline or some other kind of braided beading thread, you don't need this because they're pre-waxed, but I still find it useful to pull the thread through this before it's used. I think it helps keep it a little suppler and keep it from knotting quite as much. So this is another really good thing to have You need a beading mat of some kind. These are usually some sort of velour or Volux type mat, such as this. It keeps the beads from jumping around and rolling away. It has kind of a velvety, very cushioned surface, and this helps to keep your beads in place. And after you use the beads, do beading for a little bit, you'll find out your beads going all over the place can be a real problem. A couple other things I find handy. These are a long pair of tweezers, which are great for reaching into containers to pick up, say, a pair of jump rings or something, or even sometimes to pick up some beads. These are a pair that I actually got from the hardware department. They're just really handy, I find, because you're working with a lot of little objects. It's also important to have some sort of a small, well, how long kind of depends, but some sort of a ruler like this. This one is 6 inches long, and it's got millimeters and inches on it. That's very handy. If you're going to make your own findings, such as ear wires, you're going to need these two tools. This is a little anvil, and this is a small mallet that's used on a hammer that's specifically for jewelry making. It's also useful to have some kind of a glue for securing ends and things like that. This one was recommended to me, E6000, but there are a number of different kinds out there that you can find online and at your beading store. This is a chopstick, which probably seems like a really odd beading tool. But this can be very useful if you are doing any sort of a tubular stitch, such as peyote or herringbone. I will stick the tubular stitch that I'm working on, especially at the beginning, around this, because it can be hard to hold on to at the beginning, and then just slip it down as far as it'll go, and it holds your work for you and be really useful. My last recommendation is actually two, or could be two rather than one, and that's a really good light and a magnifying glass. I happen to have one that's both of them combined together. But if you work with small beads and have middle-aged or older eyes, you're really going to need a magnifying glass. And a good light, preferably one that is all spectrum or natural daylight, is another term that's used, is extremely helpful because you're going to really need to see those little beads. So a good light and a good magnifying glass are indispensable.